Hey everyone, welcome back to On Purpose, the #1 health podcast in the world. Thanks to each and every single one of you that come back every week to listen, learn, and grow. Now, today's guest is someone that I've been following on social media for nearly the past couple of years now, and I have loved her content, the way she presents ideas that are hard to understand in simple ways through incredible props and demonstrations. I'm blown away by her ability to communicate difficult ideas with ease, simplicity, and practicality. I'm talking about the one and only Dr. Julie Smith, who's a clinical psychologist with over a decade of professional experience, having previously worked in the NHS with veterans and the MOD in addiction and crisis centers, and now in private practice. She's also an online educator and social media star, sharing bite-sized mental health and motivational videos online with a combined following of more than 3.5 million. In November 2019, Julie launched her TikTok account to make her services and education about mental health more accessible. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Dr. Julie's audience on TikTok grew astronomically as young people related to the videos she was making about mental health and her advice to use. Now, I am so excited because in front of me I have her first amazing book that's out called Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before? Everyday Tools for Life's Ups and Downs. I want you to go out and grab a copy. It's already a #1 Sunday Times bestseller, a best-selling book. Please go out and grab a copy of this. Dr. Julie Smith, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. I've been really looking forward to it.
I know, we've been trying to make this happen for some time. Let's dive straight in. I want to understand what you saw as the greatest challenge of people that you were working with. When you looked at the root challenges of patients you worked with, clients you worked with, people you saw, people you spoke to, what are some of the biggest challenges that you think people are dealing with right now? When you look at the root, not the symptoms, not the leaves, but the root of the problem, the root of the tree.
You know, that root of the problem can be different for everybody, but certainly what motivated me to begin all of this kind of stuff and step out of the therapy room a little bit was this sort of common theme of people coming along to therapy and expecting me to do something to them. So therapy was some sort of treatment that would be done to them because they felt at the mercy of how they felt. And a lot of people didn't have the education about how their own mind works and how their own body works to feel empowered by the idea that you can influence how you feel, that you don't have to be completely at the mercy of it. There are things you can do to help yourself. And often once people had that information, that was a real game changer because suddenly, hang on a minute, there are some tools I can learn that could help. And it doesn't have to be rocket science. It doesn't have to all be out of my hands. It's not something the doctor's going to do to me. It's not this kind of spooky, sort of magical thing that I can't do myself. So I think that really sort of fired me up, that there was a lot of information and education that is often provided within certain therapies anyway, that just is life-changing for people because it enables them to take their health into their own hands a bit more and not feel that they're at the mercy of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I mean, that was such a great piece of insight because I think we all secretly hope that there's going to be someone out there who comes and solves all our problems, right? Whether it's a therapist or whether it's a partner or whether it's a friend or whether it's a mentor or a coach or whoever it may be. I think we all secretly hope that there's someone out there who's just going to magically turn up and be our fairy godmother and sprinkle their magic dust, and all of a sudden our life's going to look different. And what you're kind of saying, which is the inconvenient, painful truth, is that, well, actually it's a fortunate thing, it's a beautiful thing, is that actually it's all within your own control. You have the ability to make choices and habits and practices that can define that. Why do you think it is that we are looking to outsource our well-being or outsource our journey? Why is it that we're trying to say, fix me or solve me? Where does that come from?
I think it comes from sometimes not knowing that there are things you can do that help. and that I think there's a sort of culture around needing to buy something that is going to fit. It's good marketing, I think. That lots of companies are based on making you feel like there's something wrong with you, and they can fix it if you buy this product off them. But also mixed in with the fact that there isn't enough education around how your mind works and how you can manage your own health. We get a little bit of that around physical health, but nothing really in terms of mental health. And I kind of felt like, all these people, once they were having some of these little bits of education that were really making this difference day to day, I was kind of thinking, why do people have to pay to come and see someone like me to find that out? Because, that's not, obviously some people come for full therapy, which, is brilliant and helps lots of people. But there were a lot of people that were coming along, and once they had the education, they were raring to go. That was enough. And so I kind of wanted to make that more available.
Absolutely. So for those of you who don't have the book in front of you yet, I know you will after this podcast, Dr. Julie's talks about everything from moods to motivation, to emotional pain, to grief, to self-doubt, to fear, to stress, to meaning, all beautiful themes and topics. And we're going to dive into a few of my favorites from when I received her book over the holidays. I really wanted to talk about mood, and I want to dive in with you now. I think mood and a low mood have become such common experiences now, and the idea that we have certain days where we feel good, and there are certain days where we just feel bad and unmotivated, and we don't want to get out of bed, and we don't feel like doing anything. How should we be approaching those days or those weeks that start to feel like we're stuck, we're not moving, nothing's happening in our life? How should we approach that feeling and emotion?
Well, I think it starts with understanding that it's a normal part of being a human being. And I think that's often something that holds us all back is, there's this sort of, I don't know if it was something that's been sort of pushed by, social media or anything like that, but it's definitely online, is this idea that that somehow our default is one of happiness and contentment, and anything outside of that means you're getting something wrong, which is just absolute rubbish. That human beings are built to fluctuate, and emotions come and go. The pleasant ones come and go, and the unpleasant ones come and go as a part of that experience, and that's a normal. And if you wake up and your mood isn't as you want it to be, that can be caused by so many different things. You might have not slept well, you might be dehydrated, you might be dealing with something normal like grief, or there could be anything. But if you wake up in that mood and then respond to that mood by telling yourself that you're failing at life because you're not as happy as everybody else, or look at that woman down the road who's always energetic and always enthusiastic, and she must never get a terrible mood like this, and what am I getting wrong? And we get into that narrative that pulls us further down that spiral, rather than allowing us to kind of acknowledge this feeling is here, allow it to be present, and allow yourself to also then question what could be causing this. So what are my needs? Are there any needs that are unmet, and can I meet those that could help? And sometimes it is just a matter of doing what you can to meet those needs, if you can identify any, and then allowing that to calm naturally.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of meeting your needs, because I think what's really interesting about what you just said is that so many of us are almost judging ourselves or critiquing ourselves for running out of energy. And it's almost like looking at your phone on 3% and hating your phone for being on 3% battery life. And it's like, well, no, a phone is either going to be 100 or 90 or 80 or 70, and it's going to get to 3, or it's going to get to 1 if you don't recharge it. And it's the same thing with us. Like you're saying, that as humans, our emotions fluctuate, our moods fluctuate. We're either at 100% or we're at 3%, but we can't start hating ourselves at 3%. We can't start judging. We have to go, okay, I need to stop and recharge. I need to stop and take a moment. And that's where your question of, okay, what are my unmet needs? It's almost like, okay, well, what do I need to do to charge me? That feels like the right way to think about that. I think one of the biggest challenges, Dr. Julie, you've probably seen is that people trying to avoid low moods. We're trying to avoid feeling bad. We're trying to avoid feelings. What happens when you try to avoid an emotion or when you try to avoid feeling? What actually happens to us?
Yeah, well, it can get quite extreme. If we have these kind of blocking behaviors. So if a feeling is aversive in some way, whatever it might be, if we as soon as we start to feel it or even see signs of it that it might be approaching, we put in those blocking behaviors. And so, I don't know, you might find yourself with your head in the fridge looking for something to eat, or you might find yourself, on Netflix, just watching program after program, or drinking, or whatever that blocking behavior is for that person, or maybe staying really busy at work, and trying to convince yourself, that you've got all this energy or whatever. But when you do that, when you block emotion out, what you can end up doing is blocking them all out. So I'll often have people who get to therapy after years of doing that, and they feel numb. And they not only have they managed to block out all these negative emotions, so life is less painful in that way, it's almost become more painful because they've also blocked out their ability to feel joy or pleasure or love. And they start to question, gosh, do I love my partner? I'm not interested in all the things that I used to find pleasurable. And there's this kind of numbness. And people imagine that, there's this sort of, emotions have this bad rap, don't they? Where they're apparently this kind of irrational mess that you need to stay away from in order to be a highly functioning individual, rather than it being a part of how we work. And so, by pushing all of those away and trying to stay away from them with the idea that we'll somehow be kind of logical beings, actually being devoid of emotion strips away your life in terms of your sense of meaning or your enjoyment from life. And so that idea that, if you block one emotion well enough, you'll also block a lot of others, and then you can really start to struggle. So a lot of what we do in therapy is, changing our relationship with emotion, is looking at how can we allow emotional experience to come and go, and not only accept it, but also welcome it. How could you allow fear or low mood or sadness to be there and let it be welcome in the present moment? That's just a bizarre kind of state of affairs, right? How, we've never been taught to do that. You're taught to kind of brush it off and pretend it's not happening and make it go away. And so it's a kind of new experience, and honestly, you'll know a lot about this yourself with, using sort of mindfulness to be able to practice sitting there and allowing experiences to come and go.
Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing I took away from what you shared just there is this idea of blocking behaviors that seem like very normal behaviors, and they seem very easy and accessible, and they feel like they make sense. They look normal because a lot of people do them. And then when you really break it down and you go, oh yeah, wow, that's a blocking behavior. I'm actually trying to just numb myself from feeling things. And I love what you said, where you were like, well, actually, if you numb yourself from feeling something, you potentially could numb yourself from feeling anything, like everything, a lot of other positive emotions as well. And so by weakening your ability to feel pain, you actually weaken your ability to feel joy. And that idea is really fascinating, because that as a block is a block that we all know we don't want in our life. That's, I've loved that you've given me that reflection today, because I didn't necessarily connect the two in that way. When you talk a lot about motivation in the second chapter, and I'm glad that you touched on motivation, because I know, and I'm sure you get this too, I get so many DMs on a daily basis or messages saying like, I'm not motivated. What do I do? How do I find motivation? I don't feel any motivation today. And one of the sections in your book that I loved is called, How do you make yourself do something when you don't feel like it? And it's really funny, because someone asked me recently, they said, Jay, what do you think is the greatest skill you can have as a human? And I really thought about that. I was like, what is the greatest skill that you could have as a human? And the idea that came to my head was the greatest skill you can have as a human is being able to do something that's good for you, even when you don't feel like it, because that is the crux of life. Like, the amount of days that I wake up and actually want to go to the gym are very, very few. But do I feel amazing after going to the gym? Yes. Meditation's been a part of my life for a long time, so it's changed. I have a healthy relationship with meditation, but there are still days when I don't want to meditate, or I'm too tired or exhausted, or I'm too bored to go to sleep early. And so I'd rather think that maybe if I stay up a bit late, I'll be more entertained. And so I find that things that are good for me feel hard in the beginning, but feel great afterwards. And things that are bad for me feel easy in the beginning, but they're really bad for me afterwards. Talk to us a bit about how do we get good at doing things when we don't feel like it? Because I am completely with you. I think that's like an undefeatable skill that we all need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with what you were saying there. You know, it's that sort of motivation feeling, that sort of elevated energy, inspired feeling that you get is the feeling you get as you walk out the gym, not as you walk in generally. And it's after action and effort. You then think, you know, I never sort of feel like going to the gym either. But when I come back from the gym, I think, I should do this every day. This is great. and I think it starts with recognizing that pattern, doesn't it? Recognizing, I know I'm not going to always feel like it. Because I'm, again, it's not about failure. It's not about, you know, I think a lot of stuff online teaches people, you know, you've just got to be motivated every day. And if you're not, then what are you doing? And actually humans don't work that way. Motivation, you have to treat it like any other emotion. Some days it will be there, some days it won't. So you can't rely on it to be there to help you reach your goals. So, you know, if you've got goals that you've set around your own values and what's really important to you, you have to then find a way of being able to keep that consistent even when you don't feel like it. So you can't make the decision to act only based on, do I feel like, a bit like cleaning your teeth, right? So you clean your teeth every day. You never consider whether you really want to or not. It's just something that you do because you consider yourself someone who looks after their dental hygiene, right? And it's, you know, so it's just part of your day. It's non-negotiable. And you can kind of work with it a little bit like that. But when you see emotion as something that can come and go, you can then acknowledge that you can tap into other reasons for doing the thing that you want to do. So I don't feel like going to the gym today, but I have set myself a goal to increase my fitness because it's important to me that I am fit and healthy for my children as they grow up. I want to be able to play with them and live a long life, to be with them for as long as possible, and those sorts of things. So you're tapping into your values system and being absolutely clear on why you're doing that thing. And even if it's, gosh, you know, if it's, I have to go to this job that I hate, it might be because you're going to put food on the table at the end of the week for your children, or you're going to keep a roof over your family's head. And, you know, you can tap into those sorts of values, even if it's something that isn't, you know, something that you would, you know, benefit from sort of personally or in terms of your kind of health or well-being. You know, life can be really tough in that way, but you can tap into, well, why is it that I'm doing this really, really hard thing that I'm hating? Oh, it's because actually, yeah, I'm the breadwinner and it's important to me to look after my family and stuff like that. So you can kind of tap into the values. But also we something that's taught in a therapy called dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, is often taught to people who feel overwhelmed with emotion and then respond to that emotion in a sort of high risk or unhealthy way. And so what you teach people is a skill that they call sort of opposite action. So and you use mindfulness to help people recognize that difference between having an urge to do something and then acting on it. So, you know, the trouble is, you know, your different aspects of your experience are all experienced at once. So it's like, I think it's like weaves in a basket. You have your thoughts and you have your emotions, you have your physical state, you have your urges to do or not do something, but you don't experience them as separate. You know, you don't describe it in your head. You experience this whole thing in one. And so you're often acting based on urges, and there's no gap in between. And so you kind of use a mindfulness practice to help just widen that gap so that you can experience an urge. And in the book I talk about just a silly game that I used to play with my sisters growing up, where we would hold polo mints in our mouths, and it was a competition, see who could not crunch the mint, because it's just you just can't do it. It's impossible, right? And I didn't realize it at the time, but what we were doing there was practicing acting opposite to an urge. You have this urge to crunch down on the mint, but you learn that actually I can experience that urge and not act. And I can even do the opposite to that. So you get this moment to choose, and you'll be an expert on this yourself, but mindfulness helps to open up that gap that allows you to then choose whether you're going to go with an urge or go opposite to it. So if you wake up and the urge is to pull the duvet over and switch your phone off and shut the world out for the day, you get this choice. Okay, do I go with this, or do I act opposite to it? And often you have to make that decision pretty quick to kind of really kind of make the most of the moment. But it's a great thing. You can use things like the sort of the mint crunching competitions to just kind of practice being aware of that and in kind of light-hearted ways, so that you're more skilled at doing it when you most need it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those two massive insights. The first one was you talking about how we shouldn't rely on motivation. I thought that was such a great way of phrasing it, that we're reliant on motivation, and we can't be reliant on any feeling, because we're going to feel different every day. And the problem is we're trying to create the same feelings every day. And you're spot on that when I think about my life, I don't feel the same today recording this episode with you as I felt the same recording my last episode with the other guest. I feel different. And so I can't rely on how I feel. I have to rely on why I'm here, and why I'm doing this, and why I'm trying to serve my community, and why On Purpose listeners want me to show up at my best, and I want to show up for them. And that's what's driving me, not how I'm feeling right now. And so almost being driven by something else. And then coming to what you just said is that difference between the urge and the ability to take that space and time to respond. And in the spiritual texts, when we studied that about the mind, the three words were thinking, feeling, and willing. So being like the gap between thinking and willing, like from having the thought to actually doing it, you have that gap that you can adjust and edit and change. And you're so right that we almost need to create that gap in areas of our life where we're not trying to practice it, if that makes sense. So what I'm trying to say there, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Dr. Julie, is that if you're trying to wake up early in the morning, don't practice trying to create this gap between the urge and pulling the duvet over in that moment, practice it outside of the moment so that then you can bring it into that area. Whereas if you practice in that area, chances are your default action is going to come across. Does that make sense? And how could you build that conditioning in another area of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say practice with things that feel easy and manageable, just to create some repetition in doing that. And actually, nobody will be starting from scratch either. There will be times when you use that skill, but you just haven't recognized that you've used it. And sometimes I think becoming aware of when you use it and it's successful helps you to feel more positive about the fact that you can do it. So I don't know. Yeah, I've got young children, so sleep deprivation is torture, and your baby will wake up for the 6th time in a night, and you've got to be up at 6 for work, and you hear them cry, and you think, I just cannot get out of bed one more time. And so your body is telling you, no, I can't do this, in a very powerful way, but you do it. And you do it because you have a set of values about the kind of parent you want to be. And so, in those instances, for example, you will be doing things, or it doesn't even have to be at night. It could be anything. You might not feel like making another sandwich or, buying another load of ice creams or whatever it is for your family. But you do things because you maybe have a set of values around that, or something's important to you about that. And so it's really useful, I think, to kind of sit and think about the times when you already do that to success, so that you can really tap into that and recognize that therefore it is possible to translate it. And like you say, practice in a way that is enjoyable and manageable. And, even with the polo thing, or, kind of mindful eating and stuff like that, where you kind of pause and experience food before you allow yourself to then move forward and eat it, for example, or just kind of lighthearted things that feel easy. Because like you say, the first time you do it, it probably won't go well. And then you think, oh, this isn't